G'day, Guy here from Jackson's 4x4. We often reach out to you guys for input and feedback on what type of content you'd like to see and what topics you would like us to cover. The topic that comes up the most recently is suspension lift height. We get inquiries all the time through the shop and lots of questions on social media regarding suspension lift height. We're going to go through some of the pros and cons of different suspension lift heights, and we're going to talk about some of the things that you would take into consideration when selecting the best lift height for your vehicle. Behind me here, I've got a few 79 series Land Cruisers. They've got different lift heights so that we can talk about some of those pros and cons and show you in person. So the 6 things that I would take into consideration when looking at different suspension lift heights are: number 1, the cost. 2, legalities. 3 is going to be tyre size. 4 is handling and drivability. 5 is practicality, and then 6 is our off-road performance and ability. So first up with the cost, generally a smaller lift kit is going to be cheaper and a higher suspension lift is going to cost more money. That basically comes down to the fact that lifting the vehicle further requires more components, so we've got to cover the cost of those components and also the labour to install them. With legalities, there's different laws in different states of Australia, and it will also depend on what vehicle you have. So depending on your personal circumstance, it will vary as to what's legal, but that may be a considering factor when choosing what lift height you want to put in your vehicle. Tyre size. So with some vehicles, we have engineered suspension kits and GVM upgrades that make it compliant with a certain lift height and tyre size. So this may mean that on some vehicles, if you want to run a certain tyre size, we need to go for a certain lift height to make that legal, roadworthy and compliant. The 4th topic is the drivability and handling. So at standard ride height, we've got standard geometry, and as we raise the raise the suspension height of the vehicle, we're going to be throwing that geometry out of spec. Now we do fit some components in some areas to help correct that, but the bottom line is we're still lifting the vehicle further, we're taking things away from the standard geometry, and we're also raising the center of gravity. We're getting that weight up higher. Generally, rule of thumb, as we go higher, if you're comparing 2 comparable suspension products, the higher lift kit is generally going to handle a little bit worse than the lower lift kit, which has got that lower center of gravity and the geometry is closer to factory. The 4th thing is the practicality. One thing that a lot of people don't take into consideration when looking at different lift heights is the practicality of working and living out of a vehicle. This 79 here, as an example, has 35-inch tyres with a 4-inch suspension lift. As you can see, the tray's pretty high. So to lift things on and off of that tray, or if this had a canopy on the back to go camping out of, or even to get in and out of the cab, it is quite high. These vehicles over here, 3 inches and 35s, and then a smaller 2-inch and 33 vehicle, you can see they're a lot lower, so it makes it a lot easier to get in and out of that vehicle and use the trays and canopies on the back. The other thing is the off-road ability. So as we go higher with our suspension lift, we're getting more ground clearance under the chassis and the body of the vehicle. We're getting a better departure angle and an approach angle at the front and rear of the vehicle. And depending on what products are fitted, sometimes you're going to get a little bit more wheel travel. Not always the case though. So it depends on your application, it depends on what you're after, it depends on the vehicle. There's no one size fits all, there's no perfect lift height. If we're looking specifically at the 79 series Cruiser, we've tried most of the options. I would say if you're building just a general tourer, mostly road driving, maybe towing a caravan or something like that, then 2 inches and 33s is more than capable of everything you need. It's going to handle great, it's going to be more cost effective, it's going to keep the body, the tray, the canopy a little bit lower, easier to work out of. If you're looking for the absolute most ground clearance you can get, if you want the best departure and approach angles, if you want it to look really tall, if that's the sort of stuff you're after, then the 4-inch might be more suitable for you. However, from my personal experience, my opinion is that the 3-inch lift with 35s is your best option. It's the best compromise in between. It's got more ground clearance than a 2-inch, but it's more practical than a 4-inch. It's still going to handle pretty well, but we can get those 35-inch tyres on there. So that's my personal opinion. As I said, it will depend on your application. We don't find ourselves recommending the 4-inch lift too much for a practical tourer, but it certainly can be offered if that's what you're after. Hopefully you found this video informative. If you've learned something, if you've found it interesting, or if you'd like to see more of these videos, please feel free to drop a comment telling us what type of info you're after, like the video, subscribe to our channel, and be sure to turn on the notifications.